Hello, my name is Dr. Babatunde Brimo, and I am a senior lecturer in economics at the University of Liverpool in the management school. My research focuses on the economics of sports, and in particular, the economics of football. So, what is sports economics all about? At a simple level, it's about using economic theory and economic principles to find solutions to some of the challenges that we face within sports. At a more complex level, we gather data and we use those data to analyze what's happening within the sports industry, and hopefully the outcomes of the analysis can then be used to inform decision making within the industry. So, as an example, if we take professional football as it stands at the moment, there's a big challenge facing professional football in England. There is the pandemic, which has brought things to a halt. There are few people going to stadiums, if at all, so there's a lockdown. Games will have to be played behind closed doors in the short term. It possibly could go on for a number of months or maybe seasons. And that's a major challenge facing football. So, an economic solution potentially lies in how football should use whatever revenue is available to it to continue to operate. Now, that's not too bad when you look at the Premier League, who have large broadcast rights. But when you look at other levels of football in the Championship and Leagues 1 and League 2, the situation is rather different. Without people in the stadium, there is no revenue coming to those football clubs. And without that revenue, the football clubs can't pay its staff and it can't pay its players. So there's a big challenge that faces football. So the question is there an economic solution? Now, one solution potentially is to use the resources generated by the Premier League and for those resources to be shared across football. But the question is how much of those resources should be shared with other levels within English League football. So that's an economic challenge that faces football as an industry. So part of my work is to actually conduct research into that and to see whether certain solutions, what the outcomes of certain policies and principles are. Another part of my research looks at the economics of broadcasting. So when sports is televised, how many people tune in to watch those transmissions? What causes those transmissions to go up and go down? So a great deal of my work also looks at the economics of sports rights and modeling television audience ratings. So when we look at broadcasters who do pay substantial amounts to for the sports rights, it's important for those broadcasters to understand one, how many viewers are likely to tune in. Two, what causes those viewers to figures to go up and go down. And secondly, how much are those viewerships worth? So what's the relationship between viewership and advertising? So these are some of the things that we look at when it comes to sports research. Another aspect of the work we do when looking at sports economics is the economics of professional athletes. So looking at the earnings that athletes make, what's the economics around their contracts. So we do, again, a substantive amount of research into that area as well. We also look at the economics of corruption as well, where there is large sums of money. Inevitably, there's going to be illicit behaviour. So sports corruption is something that we should really understand. So part of the work we do here at the university is to look at the economics of sports corruption. So what causes sports corruption? How can economics help us understand corruption in sport, and how can it help us develop solutions that will combat corruption in sport. So that's another area in which we work on. And much of that research, as a university, we try to do the research and publish that work in world-renowned journals. So that's one of the tasks that we have to do. So again, it's a very interesting job and a role that I take a great interest in. How important is that research? Well, one important aspect of academic research is the relevance of it to industry. And one area that I also work on with some of my colleagues is that we apply that research to industry as well. So it's not just about publishing that work in academic journals, but it's also about using the findings of such work to influence policy and to influence decision making within industry. So as an example, the work that we and the research work that we have done looking at sports corruption has meant that we've been working over the past number of years with the European Commission, looking at developing policies and tools that will allow us to eliminate or at least reduce the level of corruption that we see in sport. And some of that research work has been used to develop tools so that professional athletes can have the confidence to report corruption if they observe corruption, and the authorities can then step in order to deal with it. So some of our research work has also contributed to that. Our work has also contributed to the decision making that we see in certain industries. So for example, the demand for sports, particularly consumer demand for professional sports. So sports like horse racing, we've done some studies looking at the demand for horse racing, and the industry has been looking at how the results of that research can be used to influence and inform their decision making. So what about research related teaching? Well, the work we do is fantastic, and we publish that in academic journals, as I mentioned earlier on. And we also use that work to inform policy and decision making within the industry. But it's also an important part of our teaching as well. So we have a module titled Sports Economics in the final year of our undergraduate programs. And any student who is interested in understanding how economics can be used to develop an understanding of sport and how economics can be used to influence decision making in sports can actually register for the sports economics module. In that module, we use lots of data to analyze what's happening within the sports industry. So for example, some of the data we use looks at the salaries of football players, for example, and we ask very interesting questions such as, is there a relationship between the salaries of professional athletes and their racial background? In an efficient market, there would not be a relationship, but we analyze and use data to answer those very complex questions. We look at studies such as the relationship between the country's wealth and its success in Olympic Games, and ask, again, interesting questions such as, given the GDP of a country, how many medals might it win in, say, a forthcoming Olympic Games? So whatever the question that sports or the sports industry can generate, one of the challenges that we often take on in this module is to use economic data to develop insights, to develop analysis that can help us understand the various markets in sports. So that's what sports economics is about. And what's also fascinating as well is that the University of Liverpool is a very serious academic environment for the study of economics in sports, and we have a number of academics who work a great deal on sports, looking at players' ratings and all aspects of the sports industry. So the University of Liverpool is one of the foremost authorities when it comes to the economics of sports. So thank you very much, and I hope that information has been very helpful to you.